Welcome to the course E8351 Digital Logic Circuits, Unit number 5, VHDL Description. So at the end of this course, one can able to understand the concept of VHDL program for various logic circuits. Okay, so here after studying the VHDL, one can able to program on its own and write his own code for running any logic circuits. So here this is the basic building blocks of the VHDL. So here the basic structure of VHDL file contains a package, a entity, and architecture. So in the architecture the processes will be happening. Okay, so if it is an adder circuit, so the adding process will be happening in the architecture, and it also has a configuration block. Okay, a digital system in VHDL consists of a design entity that can contain any other entities that are then considered components of the top level entity. For entity is modeled by an entity declaration and an architecture body. So design units are independent segments of VHDL code that can be compiled separately and stored in library. There are 5 different types of design units in VHDL. So that is entity, architecture, configuration, package, and package body. So entity and architecture are mandatory for design, but the others are optional. Okay, so here this is the general structure of VHDL. So here the entity and architecture are very much important. Okay, and others like package, process, and configuration, it may happen or may not happen. Okay, so this architecture and entity are very important for any program design. Okay, so this is the syntax for the entity. Syntax for VHDL entity. The entity is the VHDL basic building block. Okay, so it is like a file name. Okay, so without file name we can't go to the particular file, right? So likewise, so here this entity is the basic thing. Okay, so without this entity, so we can't run any we can't run any VHDL program. Okay, so all the VHDL designs are implemented by entity. All the VHDL designs are implemented by using entity. So we should know the syntax for the entity, then only we can able to design any program, any VHDL program. Okay, so unless you don't know the syntax of the VHDL entity, so it is very difficult for you to design a VHDL code. Okay, so all the VHDL designs are implemented by entity. You can imagine the entity as a black box with input, bits, and the output ports. Okay, so here I have given the syntax for the entity. Yes, then my entity, that is here you have to enter the entity name is, then port of input port. Okay, so if in your circuit you may have input ports as well as you may be having the output ports. Okay, so those all ports you have to mention over here in this port block, and then you have to end the entity program. Okay, so already you have assigned you may be assigning some entity name, and then you have to end that by the name. Okay, so this is the general syntax for the entity. Then entity declaration. Okay, so VHDL entity represent an AND gate with two inputs A and B and output port C. Okay, so if you want to represent this AND gate in the VHDL code, then you have to write entity. So this gate is the AND gate, so we can give the name as entity name as AND2. Okay, so here we have two inputs, that's why we have mentioned AND2. Okay, so here entity AND2 is port of, so here we have two input ports and one output ports. Okay, so we have mentioned these two input ports and we have mentioned the output ports in this port, that is A input std logic, then B it is also input, then std logic, and C that is the output SCD logic. Then we have the AND, then the circuit name is AND2. Okay, so this is how you have to write the VHDL code for any component or any circuit. So that's all about the section.